actually. So now we're recording, and we'll post this on the website within a day or two. One thing I want to do real quick, I'm definitely going to send you to the internet a couple of times during this. So in addition to having your Zoom thing open, if you also had an internet browser open, that would be helpful, because we're going to link to a couple of articles, and I'm going to send you to a Socrative at one point to do live and in person. Two icons if you're new to Zoom, which at this point it looks like the whole country is familiar with Zoom. But if you're new, somewhere on your screen there are two icons that you should see some variation of. You may have to move your mouse around a little bit to get them to show up like you see them on my screen there. But the one that says Manage Participants, or yours might say just participants, that one shows up for me as the workshop leader. That is where you can do things like raise your hand. You can click yes or no. If I ask a question that needs like a group response, there's like a coffee mug. If you can say you need a break. There's a more icon with the little ellipsis things where you can click things like a hand clap or a thumbs up or thumbs down or whatever. So use that. I'll keep monitoring that as well. And then the chat box, when you first click it, it opens up to everybody. So be careful what you type in there. But you can also change the to field if you just want to message particular people. You can do that. All right. So we're going to try something right out the gate here. I'm actually going to send you guys into breakout sessions. One thing I did want to point out is we did have some students register for this, and I can't see on my end who that is. So if you end up with students in your room or whatever, just say hey and ask them how they're doing and whatever. But mostly teachers, it looks like, and I recognize the vast majority of names on the list here. So I'm about to send you into a breakout room. A couple of things I'm going to ask you to do in that breakout room with your colleagues, if you don't mind. You can do introductions if you want. That might be a time waster, so you decide whether or not you guys want to introduce yourself. But I think a helpful thing, since we're all econ teachers for the most part on here, would be where are you in the course? What's worked well so far for this week and a half? What has not worked well so far? It's, just sort of touch base. Treat this as if the workshop just started and you were sitting at a table with everybody, except you're not at a table. You're virtually going to talk to them. So I'm going to assign you. You should be in a room with about 5 people. I'm thinking about 5 or 6 people should be in your room. And I'm creating those rooms now. And you should be headed to your room shortly here. So when you get the invitation, go ahead and join your room. And I will bring everybody back together shortly. All right, some of you I think just joined. We are in breakout rooms at the moment. I am trying to figure out how to move people who just joined into a breakout room. All right, there we go. That should start doing it. All right.
In Nebraska. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
So I often copy Georgia and their council stuff, so I'm here just to figure out what they're doing in terms of online PD so that I can copy them.
We're trying to figure it out too.
Yeah. So that, and I'm actually teaching econ. I teach at the college at the University of Nebraska, and I am just starting macro next week. And as much of a bummer as this situation is, I'm super excited because there's so much to talk about.
Definitely.
All right. Somebody else go.
Well, I actually teach marketing in the spring, so all I'm doing right now is trying to prepare my students and inform my students from fall semester about the new AP exam that they'll be taking
kids.
when it comes to personal finance.
There we go.
We use EverFi from BB&T to have the students do the personal finance. So there's 7 different modules that they work through.
All right, so the breakout rooms will be wrapping up here in about 5 seconds, it looks like. So hopefully we'll get everybody back on board. All right, cool. Let me make sure I got everybody with me now. Yep, everybody looks like they're back in the main room. Cool. All right, thanks, guys. I had a couple of issues on my end there, so I didn't get a chance to jump into everybody's room there. But the couple I did, I heard some good sharing going on, so appreciate that and for playing along with that. All right, so we're here to talk about macro. Oh, good. I got some good feedback in the chat there. And Brad to everyone, so that was great. We need more chat time later on. We'll certainly offer that. We will have that availability. So I want to just reiterate, the standards that I wanted to talk about real quick here. I know most people on this call are familiar with these. If you're from out of state or a student, perhaps you haven't seen these. But what I'm going to focus on the next 20-ish minutes here or so are these 2 macro policy standards, because that's really what's in the news and what is of topic today. I'm actually going to do them in reverse. So we're going to do fiscal first, and then we'll do monetary. But as I always emphasize in the workshops, it's really paying attention not just to the content, but the descriptive words that are at the beginning, or the cognitive levels, the verbs, the action verbs, whatever you want to call them. People call them different things. So for fiscal policy, you've got down there, we need to define fiscal policy. Super easy to do. That's pretty quick. I think even in a virtual setting, you should be able to do that with students very quickly. But that element B is explain the effect. So whenever you're having your students do over the next few weeks, make sure they are explaining the effect. So we're going to try and do that here in just a second, like why make these fiscal policy decisions. And then, of course, the budget deficits and surpluses are a big deal. With the Fed, you have the standard, the element D there, which is define the tools. And then you've got describe how they use the tools. So make sure they're doing both. I know I've seen assignments from teachers that have been submitted to me where they will just have the kids do like a definition kind of thing. Like they'll go through and like identify the 3 tools of the Fed or 4 tools of the Fed or whatever. And that's not enough because they're supposed to be describing those tools as well. So we're going to try to do that as best we can. So where we are is a little bit of no man's land. Everybody's figuring this out. I think that's what was coming through in some of the discussion rooms I jumped around in. That's, we're going to try and, navigate this as best we can from the GCE side. our strength oftentimes is getting teachers together, obviously, to talk about things, but also to share lesson ideas and stuff like that. So I'm already seeing in the comments, I have 3 or 4 comments that more time to chat with teachers around would be useful. So that's good to know. So as we build more of these moving forward, I'll build that more in for that time. Even just before the meeting started, some of you were on and people were sharing like movie ideas and music ideas and stuff like that. So all that's really good. I know you're following headlines. Try to get your students to follow headlines as much as possible. Macros all over the news. You're going to hear more and more about the unemployment rate, obviously. This headline was from last week, and they were already saying unemployment was spiking amid outbreak. It's just going to get worse. We had more requests for unemployment last week than we did the last 2 months in Georgia. So those kind of statistics are out there. You've got the Federal Reserve doing unprecedented things. We're going to talk about some of the things they've been doing recently. They've basically done everything they can do at this point, and some pretty extreme measures. So particularly for your AP students, I think that's useful. But even regular ed students, when you're talking about the tools and what they're supposed to do, why they're doing it, there's a lot of state fiscal policies happening all over the country. And then the 2 big ones, I guess, that came out this week is this headline. So if you missed this, essentially what the Fed said is we will do whatever we need to do to try to help the banking system stay liquid and fluid. So this Fed announcing unlimited bond purchases, pretty new, unlimited. They normally put a dollar amount on that, as most of you know, but this time they did not. And the biggie that we're all watching this week is the big fiscal policy. What's going to happen with this deal? Is it going to happen? Is the House going to stop it? That kind of stuff. So it's all over the news. I think as teachers, probably our biggest responsibility is bare minimum is to draw students' attention to it. They're in a high school economics class. It's in the standards. So make sure they're paying attention to what's going on. As best you can, try to get them to understand the severity of what's going on. I know that's not always easy. All right. I'm going to share this presentation at the end. So I'll send an email out with a link to the presentation. It's a Google presentation, so you can change it, manipulate it. I won't make you go to Orange Docs and download it. I'll just share it as is. We're about to run through a whole bunch of links here. I don't have time to go into all of them because there's some things I'd rather do with them, but know that you'll have them and they'll be available to you. So even simple slides like this one, where clearly we're on the left side of the graph over here as we talk about fiscal policy. So don't try to click on that link. Don't try to go here just yet. But there is a link that you can go to maybe after this is over if you wanted to. And this gives you a timeline of the fiscal policies that have gone up until, well, it was updated yesterday. They may have updated it today as well. I see people sharing things in the chat as well. So lots of good stuff out there. This one, though, I like in particular because it really does go, like I said, step by step. Let's see if I have this pulled up somewhere I could share with you quickly here. Yeah, I'll switch over to this one. And so what this one does for you here is you can go day by day. So one thing I would try to stress to the students is that there's not just one fiscal policy that's happened over the last couple of weeks, but there have been multiple, going back to February 24th, where the Trump administration proposed some kind of fiscal stimulus. And then since then, it's picked up from there. What is cool about these graphs on this particular link, as you can see here on the screen, is they show how much money is being allocated to which area. So with that in mind, I wanted to try to do a little assignment here. And if you would, in your browser, and I'll put it in the link as well, I'll put it in the chat box as well. If you would head to bit.ly/fiscal20, so pull up a web browser, bit.ly/fiscal20, and I'll see if I can pull it up. Put it in the chat box for you if you just want to click on it. It's going to be a longer link in the chat box, but should still work. So if you can't type it in or whatever, it's not working correctly, you should be able to click on it from the chat box now and go right to it. And here is the assignment. So I'm about to put you back into breakout rooms. So this is something you can maybe do with students either via a message board, or if you have Zoom capacity like this and you wanted to do this with them as well, it might be something you'd want to consider. But where we are going to go with this is I want you to take a couple minutes, maybe just like a minute, and skim this article. This is about the second big stimulus package that came in last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. Read the article, and then when we come back to our breakout sessions, what you're looking for is one spending and one tax policy that's in that article, two groups that the legislation is designed to help, and what specifically is making it expansionary. So I'll give you a second to read, and then I'm going to throw you back into a breakout rooms, probably the same ones you were in if you want to pick up further or earlier discussions. Sorry.
Chris, can you repeat what we're looking for in the article again, please?
Yes, and if you go back to your Zoom screen, you should be able to see what the assignment is, but it's basically one spending and one tax policy. Two groups, specific groups that you think this is designed to help as you're reading through it, like who is this for? Like, why did we pass this? And then what specifically makes it expansionary? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and throw you back into your breakout rooms. You should be able to use the breakout room and your web browser. You can go back and forth between the two if you want. Yeah, so specifically if I had students, I would have them do specifically what's on the screen here. But you guys just sort of, chat about how you would use this in general, other things you've heard. I saw some resources being shared. So I think I'm just gonna leave everybody in the rooms you were in. And you should get your invitation to join your breakout room here in just a moment. And people are going in, so that's working. Awesome.
And then what specifically makes it expansionary?
And I think the whole thing, every dollar that we
Yeah.
get, we're going to go spend it, especially now. Well,
Yeah.
as soon as we go out of our houses anyway.
Yeah, well, it's going to help stimulate the economy, definitely, because if I'm able to get my check, then I'm going to spend it.
I wonder, are you going to spend it or are you going to save it?
Now, personally, I'm going to save mine.
Right, that's what
Me too.
Very scared about.
Yeah, the average American that has been out for a while is going to spend it. But for me, I've already planned is going in this account for this saving for the rainy day fund.
Sure. Yeah.
That's smart.
I'm an average American, and I plan on doing that.
No, you're not an average American.
Or investing it.
One, you're a teacher. Two, you're an econ teacher.
but I mean, that's the kind of thing like students don't, and I think like adults a lot of times don't think through, right? It's like,
Yep.
hey, we think or we hear, hey, everybody's getting a check, but that's a lot of money that's just going to get injected into the economy, and it's not all right away.
Not everybody's going to do that.
Yeah.
Even if you invest or save, it's going into the economy
Yeah.
because the banks are going to be able to loan money off of that, et cetera.
The issue here, though, I think is different a little bit,
Mhm.
just personally, is the banks already have plenty of money to loan.
Yeah.
They don't need me to save anymore because the Fed has liquidated them quite heavily. So
No doubt about it.
something to think about.
I think if you're in a really low income family, you're not saving that money. You're spending it because you don't have food, and
That's true.
you have to go out and spend it.
Mhm.
And it's
All right, so we should be getting everybody back here in about 5 or 6 seconds. Takes a second to transition out of those breakout rooms. All right, and that I think closed everybody out. We should be good to go there. Let me pull up my chat box back so I can see. Yep, looks like we're good there. So I don't know what it looks like on your end. I know when I come back out of a breakout room, I have to reopen my chat and my participants and stuff like that. It's probably a setting I can make as the group leader or whatever. Hope you had some good discussion about that. Again, think about how you could use that with your students. That was just the second of the stimulus packages. And by the way, that link to that came off of NPR's coronavirus like special thread, and you can follow that. They also have like a special thread for monetary policy. They and different topics that they follow just all the time. So anytime an article comes up or something related to those, you can get that. So I want to move a little bit quickly here because I want to get to the monetary policy thing for sure. And then there's a Socrative I want to make sure everybody's aware of. Tell your students to check out the U.S. debt clock. Some of you were in workshops with me literally 3 weeks ago, and we looked at this, and GDP was increasing and tax revenue was increasing. And now they are both going the other direction. If you can see here where my mouse is sort of hovering over, U.S. federal tax revenue is decreasing at a fairly rapid clip. So that alone, just ask students why that's happening. Why is tax revenue decreasing? And hopefully they can tie that into unemployment and stuff like that. Below that, if you drop down, there's total state revenue is also decreasing, as you would expect as people lose their jobs. And below that, under the state debt, is our U.S. GDP. And look at that pace. That's not healthy. That's not good. It is decreasing rapidly. We're basically losing $100,000 of GDP. What'd you call that? Every 7-8 seconds or something like that. So yeah, not good times. And all of that stuff you've been teaching the students about macroeconomic policy, measurements and GDP and unemployment, all that's in the news right now. So make sure you're drawing attention to that. If they don't know anything about the U.S. debt clock, you might want to send them there. On the budget side of things, which is on the left over here, is a great, easy way to teach the difference between debt and deficit, which is in the standards. So your debt is this number at the top here. That's the total amount owed. It tells you at the very, very top of the screen where that number comes from. And then right under that, you've got U.S. federal spending versus tax revenue. Spending's going up. There's spending going up. Tax revenue over here is going down. So that's going to lead you with deficits, obviously, for the year. Okay. So moving on, let me switch the screen I'm sharing with you to this one again. One thing that you might want to mention too, this is depending on how far you think you need to go with this with your students, remind them, especially your AP students, that the government sending a check to a household is not spending, right? That's just a transfer payment. That won't get counted in GDP until people do something. And one of the breakout rooms I was in during that last session, was what we were talking about, like, what are you going to do with your money? I will probably not spend all of mine. So I'm going to be the bad guy in this fiscal stimulus. If you're wondering what it actually costs to send everybody a check, I've got a link in here which you can check out when you get this presentation yourself. I see we're running a little short on time here. It's from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. They're a think tank / interest group who, as you might imagine, doesn't like deficit spending or debt. So they are always looking very critically at any time there's some big policy like this that comes out. This one in particular, though, how much would sending people checks cost, I think is a worthwhile read. And something students could handle as well. All right, so we talked about the U.S. debt clock. Monetary policy, it's hard to teach that. I know a lot of you are probably frustrated you can't be with your students to teach that. So if you're not doing Zoom stuff, always remember the Federal Reserve Bank Atlanta has a series called The Fed Explains. You just YouTube The Fed Explains, and they have one called The Fed Explains Monetary Policy. They also have this reading here, which you can link to once you get the presentation. And it's basically, how does the Fed seek to influence interest rates? So one thing I want to draw your attention to real quick, if you want to go to that link there, federalreserve.gov/monetary policy. I'm going to pull it up so you can just follow along if you want. And, I got a question. Okay, good. All right, cool. Let me share this screen with you. So if you haven't checked out the Federal Reserve Bank's monetary policy page and you're about to teach this, or if you've already taught it and you want to reinforce it with the students, if you've never been here, there's a really interesting tool that is about on your third or fourth scroll down, depending on how fast you're scrolling, called Policy Tools over here on the bottom right. And the first four listed are, conveniently enough, the four we teach. Open market operations, discount rate, reserve requirement, interest on required reserve balances. So those are the four tools that are in the standards. And as you click on each one of those, it tells you exactly what the Federal Reserve Bank is doing with that tool right now. And the one I'll draw your attention to just for the moment, before we start to wrap up here, is the reserve requirements. I don't know if you caught this. I don't know if you saw this in the news, but pretty big news back on March 15th. The current reserve requirement starting tomorrow is zero. Banks have to keep no required reserves. They are allowed to lend everything they possibly can if they want. That's unprecedented for a long time. I know AP teachers, you guys have said, oh, we'll always assume the banks keep 10% of their reserves, right? And you should probably still teach them that for the AP test coming up in May. But in terms of real life, this is pretty cool stuff. For econ nerds, at least, it's kind of cool because this is the first time that it would have happened in any of our lifetimes for sure. So reserve requirements, 0%. And if you're looking for something to do with students, like, well, okay, big deal. What can they do with this? I've put together a very simple Google Doc that is shareable, obviously, and you can get it when you get the link. Something I think would be super easy to assign to students that they could do on their own, be easy for you to grade. That's what we're always looking for, is like, what can you use with students right away? So this is nothing fancy. It's a chart. You've got the 4 tools on the left. The students should write a brief description of each, which they could get from you. They could get from the Fed Explains. They could get from a host of online sites, obviously. Some kind of expansionary action, contractionary action, or in other words, what would be the expansionary action and contractionary action for those. And then the current policy. And this is where I think you send them here, and they can click on, the reserve requirements, it's 0%. If they click on open market operations, they will see that they have the different dates here, what the target rate for the federal funds rate is. I showed you that headline earlier that said basically with open market operations, the current policy is to buy everything or anything. So stuff like that. And then you've got your questions down here at the bottom that tie back to the standards. Remember, the standard is coming back to why are they doing this? And so you got the second question down here. If the Federal Reserve is successful in their actions, what should happen to interest rates, and why does this matter for unemployment, price stability, and economic growth? I don't have an answer key for this yet, but if you need one, I will certainly get you one. If you're uncomfortable with trying to grade that on your own or whatever, happy to do that for you as well. So both of those will be shareable. You'll be able to find those easily when I send this link to this PowerPoint to you as soon as the presentation is over. All right, last thing I would like for everybody to do, if you don't mind, please, and a lot of you, it looks like, have already done it. That's good. You've already jumped ahead to the Socrative here, so I appreciate that. If you're not familiar, if you're trying to figure out where people got to this, I will show you. So, oh, hold on a second. Sorry. If you haven't done it yet and you want to, I was going to ask everybody to head to, in your web browser, Socrative.com or Socrative. Everybody seems to say it differently, Socrative.com. And for this purpose, for our meeting here, I was going to have you log in as a student, and you would use my class code, although this link is shareable. I'm sorry, not the link. The actual quiz itself is shareable. So as you, if you use a Socrative account and you want to borrow this, it's public, so you can search for it. You can also email me and I can send you the direct code for it if that would be helpful as well. If you're not familiar with Socrative, here's what you can see on the other end of it. Let me share this. So I can see very quickly how everybody did. I did ask for your name, so if I wanted to, I could show names and I could see how everybody responded or whatever. But I have it hidden currently, so that I don't see everybody's names. And the thing that I like most about it is I can look very quickly and see which questions have issues. So for example, just kind of glancing at this, I can see that question 5 is being missed quite a bit. Yeah, you guys are all teachers, so they're all coming out right. Maybe it may also be sort of an easy thing too. Anyway, you have access to this. You can make it, it's shareable. It's a public thing if you want to have your students do it. If you're doing this currently, if you're on this topic right now. So anyway, that Socrative is there. It's just a very simple, is this fiscal or monetary? Let me scroll over to, there's one question I did want to draw your attention to though, real quick. Was it 12, I think? Some of them are both. So question 11, for example, which you should be able to see on my screen here. This policy has expansionary capability. So I can click the how do we do button, and most of you guys are obviously answering correctly because they both are expansionary. So anyway, stuff like that. Okay, you have that. Let me make sure there's nothing. I said I was going to keep this to around 45 minutes. But I will happily hang around and answer questions if needed to, or if needed. There's the copy of the Socrative quiz. One other final interesting thing that's going on right now that I think you might want to point out to students is it's a great time to compare the policies in terms of how they go into effect. So remember that monetary policy is decided by the Fed. They can decide that pretty quickly. So it has a really short, what we call inside lag. The decision gets made like instantly, more or less. And the fiscal policy, as we're seeing, has a much longer lead time. So there's a lot of politics involved, takes a long time to get the policy. However, once the policy's in place, it reverses. Sometimes it takes a long time for those monetary policies to work their way through the banking system, whereas, at least if what I read this morning is accurate, we might be able to get checks as early as May on the fiscal policy side of things. So if they were to pass that and approve that, the outside lag on a fiscal policy is, much shorter. Lastly, and then I will take questions, or I'll just open it up and people can do what they want. I have just some random resources here that if you're looking for things to teach monetary fiscal policies, that would be helpful. That might be helpful for you. And Econ EdLink, the CEE, the National Council, make sure you're checking their site. They're offering a ton of webinars, as is Next Gen Personal Finance, ngpf.org. They have, I think they did 3,000 hours of virtual PD last week, which is crazy. All personal finance related, but if you're looking for some of that, they've got a lot of that. I know probably everybody's got Zoom meetings now that we're all online, at least for the short term here. And one thing on the Econ EdLink site as well is they have a collection called Understanding Fiscal Responsibility, which we have shared at workshops before. But I would recommend that too during this time, is it really gets into a lot of different issues surrounding fiscal policy. Last thing I would like from you, and then I'll just open this thing up, is if you wouldn't mind filling out the survey. And at the end, it's going to ask you for a comment. In that question, if you wouldn't mind answering, like what else would you like to see? What might be useful in this format? Was this format even useful? Was it a waste of 45 minutes? Just anything, any kind of feedback. This is a first for us. So, the more feedback we get, the better these will be. I will tell you that tentatively the plan is to run one of these a week, but we want to make it useful in things that you think would help. And then Angie Battle, our program manager, will start running some of the elementary ones soon as well. So a couple of questions I've got in the group chat, and then I'm just going to open it up and you can chat about whatever you want. May I have permission to share this presentation with other teachers? Absolutely, yeah. I'm going to send you just the open link, so you do what you want with it. All right, thanks. Appreciate that, Moises. Thank you, Pam. All right, so I don't know, this might be a terrible idea. I'm going to unmute everybody if anybody has any questions. If you got dogs barking or whatever, we're about to hear it all at once. Probably a lot of keys clicking. Thanks, Lisa. We appreciate you as well.
As crisis in the nation's largest city explodes, New York now makes up more than half of all new cases in the United States, and no community here is. All right.
So if you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to take those. Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ken. I look for an email from me in about, I don't know, like 10, 15 minutes that I'll have this link. If you don't get it in 10 or 15 minutes, email me and I'll resend it. Yeah. So thanks for coming.
Chris, I'm having issues with the Bitly.
Okay.
Same here.
Okay. Let me put it in the. In just a second. I'll just put the link directly in the chat box. Sorry about that.
And I have a real specific question too.
All right. All right, let me get the bit again here, or the link.
Yes, fine.
We are very well resourced now.
I don't know why that didn't work.
Certainly, I see some numbers on the screen. Those numbers are already outdated. We're currently at about 3,200 members on the uniform side. It's about triple the rate that we're normally.
I see what happened.
And even on the positive COVID test side, those numbers have grown too. But we are making adjustments.
All right, the link for the survey, if you want to do it via link, is going into the chat box.
We are going to get through this.
I had too many numbers in there. All right, you should be able to click that link. That should take it. This took me there.
emergency technicians.
Yes, Marianne, you had a question.
Okay, is there a good website that somebody knows that I can kind of add in an audio file to? I know that you've done it before. I've seen where you have done it in workshops, but is there an easy one where I can load
So you want to record yourself?
Oh, no.
I already, if I may, I already did that. I gave out my Google Voice number.
Like news or something.
And
gotcha.
Used it, but I did disseminate that through Verge and Remind again, and I've actually been contacted by about 3 students through that, which has been helpful. My problem was I went across 5 different platforms and had to track.
I don't know if Lorenzo's answering
5 different like pieces of data at one time, and it's just been a little much.
Lorenzo, he might. I don't know. Yes. Yeah, Marianne, I can email you. A couple of ideas for that.
Okay.
So I'll get on that here in just a minute. So you want like an NPR story or something like that?
Oh. Yes, there's actually a Planet Money one that talks about.
Okay. Yeah, I'll email you that.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head how to say
and
it.
Then there is an NPR. I kind of just want pieces of both.
Gotcha.
And real life stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. We can make that happen.
Thank you.
All right, I think I found the TV. Yeah, anybody that's still on? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Leah, sorry, I forgot to plug you guys as well. Yeah, DOE is also the virtual PLC for economics is also doing their thing as well. So if you're not in that group, there's really no reason not to be. It's a good group to be in. It's for the state econ teachers. Victoria, I think I fixed that issue. I knew that was risky unmuting everybody.
Chris, you said there's a virtual econ group?
So the State Department of Education, I'll put the link in the, no, let me clarify. It's not a virtual econ group. It is the state DOE's, what they call the virtual PLC. So the professional learning community that they run, and they do online webinars, and they post stuff and let you know what's going on around the state from the Department of Education's perspective. I'll put a link in there to it.
Right, and Leah could actually invite anybody that's interested to join the community so that they can be in the loop.
Okay, that would be good.
Okay, I would like to be part.
Yeah, it's a really good group to be a part of for sure.
So if you'll email Leah Wetzler, or if you email us, I can get you in contact with her, or we can get you in contact with her.
Yeah. Angie, do you mind? Angie, would you put your email address in the chat box there? Because I think you're better at it than me. I was just looking for how I was going to send people to.
Okay, it's easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Yeah. So Leah or Angie is going to put their email in there, and then Tina, you can use that and ask them how to join. Yep. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I know I'm a member, but I don't remember how I got to be a member.
Because you're Chris Cannon.
No, well, I mean, I joined early on, but I don't remember.
That's how it happened. You're
You
Chris
were a
Cannon.
member at birth, Chris. You just didn't
It's
realize
just
it.
natural.
We shared that, Leah, in our presentation, but I'd have to go out and find the file of that presentation. So
Yeah. So if send the email to Angie or send me an email, and I'll
Yeah.
make sure to send those directions in to have you join. We'd love to have you. More resources, the better, to support econ education.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Leah.
Leah's the bomb. I'm just saying.
Yeah, Leah does a great job. Yeah.
yes.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Take care.
Hopefully everybody's having fun. All righty. All right, well, I'm going to end this recording. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I'm going to go and read your feedback, and the next one hopefully will be even better. That's the plan. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Y'all are the